Hey kid, I have your first case for you, and this one's gonna be a doozy.
Thanks, Chief. But wait a second. Why did you leave this bottle of Sunny D next to the file?
Trust me, son. Where you're going, you're gonna need it.
The Chief seemed a little distraught when he came with the file. Was it because he knew that I slept with his wife? What was it about this weird file he threw on my desk? Or did it have something to do with this bottle of Sunny D? Either way, I knew I needed to start this case. This file started as most do, getting our disguise ready we would be using for the remainder of the case. I decided to disguise myself as this lanky, pale ghost figure, and going under the moniker of Jimbler with an E instead of a U. The locals around these parts didn't seem to have much intelligence, so I knew this would be a good disguise. I had an anonymous tip tell me I should take this young white branch. I heeded these kind words, so I took it. My next goal of this case was to ask around town and gain as much info about who or what this Dark Souls might be, and where I could find them. I found a local man taking a nap in the middle of a park, and I thought I would sit down with him and see what he knew. But he responded with ferocity and an unruly behavior. I did what anybody in my position would do, and I fought him. Well, you can watch the tapes. As I drew my final breath, I thought my time in this world was over. But, to my delight, I had been reborn at a nearby bonfire. To my surprise, in this weird land, there seems to be some kind of life after death. I will make use of this for the remainder of my travels in this strange land. I eventually made my way into a small village of sorts, aptly named Firelink Shrine, where I met many beautiful people such as the Firekeeper, the Shrine Handmaiden, and my best friend, Andre the Blacksmith. I also met this pleasant old man named Ludith. Ludith told me of the history of this mysterious new land I had found myself in, and how I will be able to reenact the linking of the first flame. So now that I knew what I needed to do, I packed myself a ham and cheese sandwich, some crackers, and my Sunny D, and I set off on my journey. I found myself on the high wall of Lothric, where I cut my way through the army of the dead, zombie dogs, and knights clad in the most beautiful of armor. I eventually made my way into a church, where I joined the local congregation and pledged my faith to my new friend Emma. After having a nice conversation with Emma about life and death over a cup of tea, I ventured across the way and found myself fighting my next obstruction, Vordt of the Boreal Valley. My footage actually cuts off there, but I had a local artist do a rendition of what occurred after our first death. After dying more than a few times, we summoned a buddy to help us on our journey, and after even more attempts, we finally claimed victory. I also killed some kind of big tree at some point too. Another bit of key information that went missing was the meeting of our new best friend, Sigurd of Katarina. Our new friend also helped us kill this big fire demon, and now we will forever be indebted to him. Our footage resumes hours later, where we sliced and diced our way through the undead settlement, and luckily, to that anonymous tip from earlier, the White Branch allowed us to come out unscathed from the watchful sniper. After many trials and tribulations, we made our way into the Road of Sacrifices, where we met two new friends that would help us along the way, and their names were Big Gaming Gamer and Leo. With their assistance, we fought many assailants, which included giant crabs, invaders, and sorcerers. We eventually found ourselves fighting the Crystal Sage, which, after but one attempt, fell to our great power and teamwork. I went back to briefly meet a strange wizard by the name of Orbeck, who would eventually teach me a few more spells to help me along my way. After fighting through the Cathedral of the Deep, we found ourselves in a church. This church would run through a fancy new area, where we'd meet a large man taking a nap. Let's call at him, and see if he can help us along the way. Hello, large fellow over there. Could you perhaps give me some directions? I'm quite lost." With no response from the locals, we continue on, and actually saw a familiar face. It was Siegward. But this time you get to see him for real. This is not our artist's rendition of him. But something sounded strange about his voice. I offered him a throat lozenge, but he declined in a not-so-delightful manner. He informed me about treasure ahead, so I listened to my onion friend and continued onward. I should have listened to my detective thoughts and knew this was a trick. It was a fiend I had heard about by the name of Patches. After that painful treachery, I continued on my way through the church, where I came across the local Sunday service. I apologized for the intrusion, and I tried to make my way out. But they had locked the door, and I was forced to fight. I died once in the process, but after some careful thought and analysis of the situation, I was able to defeat these foes. After running around this area for far too long, I discovered that it was indeed a dead end, and if I were to continue my journey, I would have to take another route. Where we resume was one of my most hated parts of these lands, the Farron Keep. In this stinky place, the ground is super sticky. And even worse, you get poisoned no matter where you go. But this place holds our first target, the first Lord of Cinder, the Abyss Watchers. After some minor puzzle solving, we made our way to confront our foe, and fell some time after. This time, I tried something new. I called up a new partner to help me in this fight, a righteous man by the name of Goddard, who became a punching bag, so to speak, for the fight. But it allowed me to sock it to the Watchers. I then returned to HQ to place our first cinders down on the throne. I then continued forth to the catacombs of Carthus, where I faced skeleton soldiers, skeleton wizards, and my least favorite, the skeleton balls. I eventually reconvened with our old friend, Big Gaming Gamer, to help us defeat the largest skeleton of them all, High Lord Wolnir. And after more than a couple attempts, he finally saw defeat, and I made my way to what I assumed is the homeland of our friend, Vordt, Irithyll of the Boreal Valley. I would have liked to have a warm welcome when coming to these new parts, but I was instead bombarded by a freaky six-eyed demon dog on a bridge. Luckily, somebody put up his doggy gate so he wasn't able to follow me onward. Once again teaming up with our partner in crime, Big Gaming Gamer, he was able to take me on a tour of these new lands. He showed me the luxurious sewer system, secret walls, and we even met up with some of the locals. The final stop on our tour was the mayor of the Boreal Valley, this nice guy named Sulyvahn. And even though our time with him was short-lived, and I believe he was a great mayor of this town, so maybe if I come back here again, I can stop by and give him a visit. After continuing forward and fighting some knights and guards, I concluded that there was a second mayor who wanted to talk to us as well, in a nearby town called Orlando. Definitely not the loveliest place in the world, not a good choice if you want a vacation. But, anyways, this other mayor was actually one of the Lords of Cinder we needed to defeat. They were somebody named Aldrich, the Devourer of Gods. What a fun name! With the help of Big Gaming Gamer and Leo by my side, we are finally able to best Aldrich and claim our victory against the second Lord of Cinder. Our tapes lost a little bit of footage here, but I'll try to explain what happened. I ventured down into the smoldering lake, where I died more than a few times due to a big crossbow, and falling through the ground a few times. But I eventually teamed up with Goddard again to kill the old Demon King. I also discovered that our friend Siegward was trapped in a well, and that fiend Patches stole his armor. After much back and forth between Patches and some kind of grey rat, I was able to purchase Siegward's armor and help him continue on his journey ahead. I then ventured down below the city of Irithyll into the dungeon. This place was dank, dark, and just straight up annoying. But there was a light to all this pain and suffering, or so I thought. I had an anonymous tip tell me that our pal Sigurd was kidnapped and locked in the cell in this area, but when we finally came across the place where he was supposed to be, he was nowhere to be found, and I soon discovered that Sigurd had met a tragic fate before this point, and our onion bro would be lost forever. It's sad. No matter where I look, I can't stop seeing your face, and it makes the pain of your loss so much greater. But I can't let your death be in vain. I will use this pain and grief from your death as fuel to defeat the third Lord of Cinder on our list, Yhorm the Giant. And with the power of the Storm Ruler, we were able to make quick work of that lord. After our meeting with Yhorm, we were magically transported to our old friend Emma, where she was crying terribly on the ground. I reached out my hand with a cup of tea as an attempt to soothe her ill. She disappeared into ash, but before I could get a minute to mourn our old friend's death, I was attacked by a new foe, the Dancer of the Boreal Valley. The Dancer died rather quick to what some might call my magic stick. Our adventure continued through a dilapidated garden. I did try to avoid most of the foes in this area because, they were just kind of scary. And then we came across another not-so-friendly dog by the name of yeah. He was not too much of a hassle, and I made quick work of him, and he fell fast. I also picked up a new greeting of these lands that would prove useful for us later. The following area was a bit confusing at first, but upon further inspection, I discovered that this was the same as where we had begun our adventure, except something was missing here. It was much darker and devoid of life, and as I continued my investigation forward, I came across a familiar, not-so-friendly face, the Champion Gundyr. He was a rootin' kinda souped-up version of the one from the beginning of our tale. However, even though the power of the Champion Gundyr was strong, our powers were stronger, and I bested this foe without defeat. I then took this new greeting I had learned and did a bit of relaxing yoga by the side of this cliff. So relaxing that I took a little nap, but when I woke up, I was in this strange land of dragons, the Archdragon Peak, where I soon after, you guessed it, fought a large ancient wyvern. Yeah, I thought it would have had dragon in the name too, but I digress. I first tried to take on this foe head first, which was definitely not my brightest moment, but then I figured out I needed to run up this whole castle and drop down on its head, which I definitely got on my first try. So, I then went back to where I fought the Dancer to begin my ascent up this magnificent castle. I eventually ran into a pair of dragons, which forced me down an interesting path to the side that eventually ran me down the circle to where I started. So, I did what anybody would do in this situation. Instead of going to the right, I went to the left. This was the right choice, or should I say, the left choice. This path eventually led me to a weird suit of armor being magically controlled to kill me. The humanity. After a few attempts to vanquish this foe, we finally saw success, and I found myself in a place that holds nearly infinite knowledge. The Grand Archives. This place was full of my kind of people, wizards. But when I asked them if they could teach me how to cast a couple more spells, they threw some wax on me, shot me with some super speedy magic missiles, and I died. A few times. This place was absolutely horrid. The place that I was once excited for made me cower. And I wanted to get out of this place as soon as I possibly could. And after many attempts to run past all these stone men, I kicked down a ladder, which allowed me to finally make it out alive. Or so I thought. At the top of this castle, I was confronted by the last Lord of Cinder, the twin princes, aka Lorien and Lothric. To say this was a walk in the park would be a complete understatement. Fought these two piggybacking stepbrothers more than I would like to admit. But after all those trials and tribulations, I was finally able to secure my victory and claim the final ashes. There was, however, one last barrier that stood in my way. The Soul of Cinder. This guy looked pretty tough. He looked like the type who would eat nails for breakfast. But to tell you the truth, this guy was a big pushover. As compared to my last foe, this guy was a dream. But as I slew my final foe, I walked over to finally link the first flame and leave this cruel land. I never figured out what Dark Souls was. Maybe it was all the people I came across, or maybe it was myself, cursed to link this flame time and time again. I will never forget the faces of the friends I made along this way, and especially yours, Siegfried, my friend. And after all that, I guess I could finally call Dark Souls 3 case closed. If you made it this far into the video, I just want to say thank you. This was very different from what I typically do, and if you like this type of video, please tell me what kind of games you want to see me do in the future, or if you want to see me do the Dark Souls DLC, anything along those lines, I'm up for it. And if you want to support the channel and the videos that I'm going to be making in the future on here, consider subscribing. Thanks again, and I hope to see you in my next video.